Hey everyone, before we start the video, I'm excited to announce the launch of my new coaching program, Top Gap University, where I'm going to be hosting live coaching sessions multiple times per week where you can have your games reviewed and learning objectives set to help you improve week by week. Other than the classes, you're also going to have access to champion tier lists that I'll be updating every patch, and also access to events such as 1v1 tournaments that I'll be hosting in the future. If you feel nervous at all about having your gameplay reviewed in a classroom setting, feel free to watch it first. You can learn from the feedback I'm giving other students until you feel more comfortable sharing your own games. The goal of Top Gap University is to create a community where all top laners can improve together and celebrate in each other's victories and milestones. If you have any questions at all regarding it, feel free to ask me in the Discord below. But other than that, thank you for your patience, let's get this video started. How's it going everyone? Today I'm going to be covering everything you need to know about how to learn and master Jayce. Now of all the champions that I've made a guide for so far on this channel, Jayce has the highest skill ceiling. He's one of the hardest top laners in the game in my opinion, but he's also one of the most fun. Your journey to becoming a Jayce master is going to be filled with a ton of highs and lows, but you're really going to enjoy the journey because this champion just has so much you can do with him, so much carry potential, and you're really going to enjoy yourself. So if that sounds good to you, let's get it started. First up, we're going to be covering the runes, and Jayce has 3 rune pages to choose from, all of them being extremely powerful, but we're going to start with his most standard page, and that is the Phase Rush rune page. Now, the biggest weakness of Jayce as a champion is his lack of mobility. He's quite easy to lock down, he's very vulnerable, but Phase Rush is going to help you survive in a lot of situations where otherwise you wouldn't be able to. This is an extremely powerful rune because if someone ever dies onto you, you can jump onto them with Hammer Form, knock them away, Phase Rush out of there, or even kite them with Range Form. It has a ton of usage, but essentially the main point of it is to keep you alive in situations where without it you wouldn't be able to. And as for the runes in this tree, you will be running Mana Flow Band every game. Jayce can get quite mana hungry, especially before he gets his tier, so Mana Flow Band is going to help you a lot, especially in your lane. For your secondary rune, it's going to be absolute focus every time, because the way Jayce plays out, especially in the mid game, is you want to be staying high HP, poking the opponents from far away, so the extra AD from this rune will help you a lot. And as for the third rune, it's either going to be Scorch or Gathering Storm. Now, I strongly recommend only taking Scorch in matchups where they're not going to be building Doran Shield in second win, as they're just going to regen all that Scorch damage back. And if you're unsure which matchups those will be, keep in mind that ranged champions get a ton of less value from Doran Shield. So if you're versus a champion like Kennen, champion like Vayne or Teemo, then Scorch is going to be quite good, because if they build Doran Shield, they're trolling, so the extra damage from Scorch is going to help you a lot in range versus range matchups. And other than that, if you're versing a melee champ, they're probably going to build Doran Shield if they know what they're doing, so Gathering Storm is going to be more consistent. Now, as for your secondary range, you're going to be running the Inspiration page every game, and I strongly recommend never playing Jayce without Cosmic Insight. This rune is just so overpowered, I say it in almost every guide, but especially on Jayce. Because if you're ever versus a hard engaged champion and you don't have your flash, it's very hard for you to survive. If you're versus a Jarvan, a Yone, especially a Malphite, without flash you are a sitting duck. So having your flash up more often means you're going to be able to do more damage in teamfights more often. And also the lower TP cooldown is really broken in lane, so you can TP back before your lane opponent, TP up 1 minute before. It's just OP in general, so I recommend it. And as for the second rune, I recommend either cookies or free boots. Now personally, I run cookies every game, because on Jayce, if you can get to 1100 gold, and we'll talk about it more in the item section, it feels pretty good getting a serrated Dirk on your first recall, and I found without cookies it's very hard to do so. But if you're in a super free matchup, say you're versus Garen or Singe, you don't really need it. Or if you found just in general across your Jayce games where your cookies are stacking up, you're recalling with 2 or 3 of them in your inventory, not really using them, then of course you can just take the free scaling from the boots. Moving on to the second page, and that is the Conqueror page. Now this is the strongest rune in terms of all-in power, the best one for solo kills, and there's certain matches where you just need it. Champions like Aurelia, champions like Yone, you are forced to fight them. Phase Rush is not really going to get you away from them, and without Conqueror there's no real way you can kill them unless they really mess up, so Conqueror is going to give you a ton of value in those matchups. Camille as well when you're trapped in their ulti. Phase Rush doesn't really do anything, so Conqueror is really good versus champions where you're forced to fight them. Now this rune can be risky, and it doesn't scale as well later on into the game, where of course in teamfights, Phase Rush is going to help you a lot if you get dived onto by other champions, but there are just some matches where you need this rune, and especially in lower elo brackets, it has a lot more 1v9 potential. Now, as for the runes on this page, you're going to be running Presence of Mind. Like we talked about before, Jayce mana hungry early on, and you won't have mana flow banned for this page, so you need Presence. Second rune, either Alacrity or Tenacity. You take Tenacity, of course, if you need it, versus champions like Sejuani, champions like Leona, where they have a ton of stuns or snares. You definitely need to have Tenacity, but most of the time you will be running Alacrity for the bonus attack speed. And for your third rune, you will be running Coup de Grace, because on Jayce you want to be executing people when they're low HP, sniping them with your range form, of course, and you don't really get a ton of value from Last Stand, as you shouldn't be getting low HP on Jayce to begin with. And Cut Down used to be good when you used to start Longsword, but recently they did buff Doran's Blade, so you'll be starting that every time. So in general, Coup de Grace is going to be better. Secondary runes are the same inspiration tree every game, with of course Cosmic Insight, best rune in the game, and then either cookies or boots depending on how much you feel like you need the cookies. And your third and final rune page is the first strike page. Now you'll see this most commonly on mid Jayce, but on top Jayce it can be quite greedy. A lot of matchups you just need your Phase Rush or your Conqueror. Let's say for example you're versus an Olaf or a Darius and they ghost onto you, and you don't have Phase Rush, there is a very high chance they can kill you. Or if you're versus a champ like Aurelia or Camille like we talked about before, and they all in you and you don't have Conqueror, they can ignore your damage and beat you down. It's very easy for them. But if you're in a free matchup, a champion like Cho'Gath, Garen, Singe, of course first strike is going to feel really good, because Jayce spikes really hard at 2 to 3 items and first strike will get you there a lot faster. So I recommend this rune when you can get away with it if you're in an easy matchup, or if you just feel I don't really need my Phase Rush, I played this matchup before, I'm going to be fine, then you can greed and take first strike. And as for the runes in this tree, you don't change them, it's going to be free boots, cookies, and cosmic insight. Now, as for the secondary runes, there is two options, where you can run sorcery, full scaling, and have absolute focus gathering storm. So if you want to have the scaling mindset, this can feel quite good, or you can run the Zeus page. So what Zeus likes to do on first strike is he likes to run domination with taste of blood, a bit of extra healing, and zombie ward. Now zombie ward can feel really good on Jayce if you're in matchups where their jungler is probably going to look to camp you. But let's say for example, you're versus an Ornn top and a Rek'Sai jungle, first strike will feel really good for your matchup, but versus Rek'Sai it's going to be very hard for you to survive ganks. But if you have zombie ward, you have a ton of extra vision. Of course, you're poking this Ornn under tower, you're keeping him trapped. If you have your zombie ward, he's not going to be able to clear it. It's going to help you spot out ganks, it's going to help you to survive. So I recommend domination and especially zombie ward in those situations. Now to wrap up the rune section, I'm going to show a list of when I would take exactly each rune, but in general I really don't like making these lists. The reason I'm doing so is because Jayce is quite a hard champion, so I'm trying to make it easier for you, but the reason I don't like doing these is because this is from my experience. Playing in high-elo with my level of mastery on Jayce, this is what I would personally take, but it's going to be different for you 100%. Because let's say, for example, you're playing in Silver and you're versus a Fiora or a Gnar, they're probably not going to have a very high level of mastery on their champion, so it's going to be better for you to take Conqueror and play for solo kills. Or another example, let's say you're not very good at Jayce, you're just starting, and you versus a Jax, first strike can be quite risky. Because if he jumps onto you, you knock him away with your hammer form, and you're not playing around that cooldown. You walk back up to him with your range form and he jumps onto you, you can't knock him away. His E cooldown, of course, lower than your E cooldown, he's going to look to solo kill you. Or even that brief 5 or 6 second cooldown when you just switch to range form, he's going to jump onto you and punish you. It's going to be very hard for you to play without Phase Rush if you're uncomfortable in that matchup. I want you guys to use this guide as a rough guide. Don't just copy it blindly. I want you to use it for inspiration, use it if you're unsure what to take, but really work on critically thinking when you should take each rune for each matchup based on your past experiences. Now, as for your summoner spells, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this section, as it's pretty straightforward. You're going to be running Flash and TP every game. On Jayce is not a ton of variety, you just need both of these spells. You need Flash to survive all the threat, you're going to get camped without it, you're going to get killed in teamfights without it, you just need it, that's not optional. As for TP, there's a little bit of variety. I'd run TP every game if you're in an elo bracket gold or above. However, if you're in silver or below, you can take Ignite, embrace the bloodshed of that elo bracket, and just really look to get solo kills in your lane and win that way. But in general, the way you win lane on Jayce is by poking them down slowly, staying high HP. You don't really look for an all-in versus all-in, full HP versus full HP with Ignite. That's just not really how you play Jayce. So in general, it is better to take TP and play the war of attrition in your lane. Moving on to item builds. Now, building on Jayce is one of the easiest parts of the champion, where you're going to be starting Doran's Blade every single game. You used to start Longsword and use that to get a Serrated Dirk on your first recall for only 750 gold. However, recently they did buff Doran's Blade. The item is just very powerful right now, so you don't really want to be playing without it. Now, as for your first buy, if you can get a Serrated Dirk on your first recall, you're really going to do a ton of damage and bully your lane. The best possible first recall timing on Jayce is 1250 gold. Dirk and refillable. If you hit 1250, I would not be staying in lane much past that. You really want to be basing in that Dirk as soon as you can. However, keep in mind on Jayce, you do need a Tear of the Goddess every single game. That's not optional, so if you do buy a Dirk on your first recall, make sure you're basing pretty soon after that to get your Tear. You don't want to be staying in lane for 1000, 2000 gold after you have your Dirk. You want to be basing around 400 to 600 and get your Tear of the Goddess as soon as you can. Now, if you're inexperienced on Jayce, or if you're in a hard matchup getting ganked in general, that's okay. You can't always get your Dirk. You shouldn't really aim for it every game. It's just something good if you can get it, but you do want to at least get a longsword. So you do need the Tear as well. So the next best base is 900 gold on Jayce. Tear, longsword, refillable. I see a lot of Jayces make the mistake of cheater recalling or just basing early for their Tear, but really that's not good. You really want to be getting some AD on your first recall, so even one longsword is okay. But of course you do need the Tear, so 900 gold is probably the minimum I look to base for on Jayce. Some games you will have to base early and get the Tear, that's just reality, but your goal should be at least 900. Now, as for your first item, this is the hardest part about building on Jayce because it varies from game to game. However, you will be rushing your Mythic every time. You'll be sitting on your Tear of the Goddess, rushing your Mythic, and as of right now, Ghostblade is pretty overpowered, so you will be defaulting to that most of the time. The item is just overtuned at the moment, but in general, the way you'll be building your items is you'll be building Eclipse and matchups where they're going to be diving onto you. So champions like Camille, Aurelia, Jax, Riven, all of these champions have to dive onto you to be useful in the side lane, so Eclipse will give you a ton of value. And especially if you don't have Phase Rush, Eclipse is going to feel quite nice because you're going to get movement speed from that. And then as for Duskblade, this is the best on mid Jayce, but in general, this is the greediest choice. And it gives you the option that you don't really have on Jayce, where you can flash execute the backline with your hammer and just walk on out with the untargetability. Now this item is the best in terms of pure team fighting, however, it is the most useless in terms of 1v1. If you're versus Jax, for example, and you don't have Eclipse, it's going to be very hard to greed Duskblade, and the times I would build this item are games where you're snowballing. Games where you're 4-0, 3-0, you're just getting fed out of control, and you can greed it. You're going to beat the Jax anyway, maybe he's 0-3 in lane, you're going to beat the Riven, doesn't matter. So in that aspect, in that situation, sorry, you can build Duskblade. Now, as for Gore Drinker, I don't like this personally, but it can be good in games where you have no frontline. Let's say your jungler's trolling you and then you pick Graves, and they have a ton of melee champs. If they're triple melee topside and you have no frontline in general for your team, if they have assassins and a bunch of melees, then Gore Drinker can feel quite good. Of course, you get Omnivamp from that, which is nice, but in general, you will be building just a lethality mythic. And if they do end up nerfing Ghostblade to the point where it's a balanced item, the best time to buy this item are in matchups where you don't really need the Eclipse and you're not getting too fed. So let's say, for example, you're versus an on top, you're just taking first strike farming gold off him, but he's not really dying. You don't need Eclipse in that matchup. You're not really fed enough to the point where you're going to be flashing onto the backline with hammer form. Maybe you will, but in general, the main way you play Jayce is poking from far away. So in that matchup, champions like Ornn, champions like Sion, Ghostblade can feel really good because you don't really want to be playing side lane as Jayce that much. You don't really want them to be team fighting and you're playing side. You really want to be group and poking. So Ghostblade will help you make them answer your wave, push out the side, make them answer, and then fog between the lanes, run back and forth with your Ghostblade extra movement speed. And as for your second item, it's pretty straightforward. You'll just be upgrading your tier to a Mana Mune. The best two items spike on Jayce is Mana Mune with your Mythic, and once you have that, your poke is going to do a ton of damage. Now, there may be some games where you're 8-0 or 10-0 and your tier has not even been close to stacked. In that situation, you can just build a second lethality item and keep snowballing if you want. But I don't want to confuse you guys. Over 99% of the time, you will just be building Mana Mune, so that's why I've only got that there. Now, as for your boots, it will be the Ionian boots most of the time, as you do want the flash cooldown, of course, on Jayce, but just CDR in general is strong on this champion. But of course, if you're versus triple AP topside, a ton of CC, you will need the Merc Treads, or the same for AD. Triple AD topside, a bunch of AD melee assassins, then Ninja Tabbies will feel quite good. And as for your trinket, make sure you're switching out to blue trinket as soon as you can on Jayce. Your champ is quite vulnerable. You don't want to be face checking bushes and warding. You don't really want to be checking jungles and sweeping. So every single time you will just be building far side alteration on this champion. Now as for your third item, you will be building Shroud's Grudge most of the time. This item has everything you want in it, CDR, armor, P, and AD. Even make sure Shock Blast slow them. There's not much more you could ask for an item, so you will be building this almost every time. However, there are some situations where they have literally no armor and no tanks. And in that case, you can build another lethality item. So Serpent's Fang will feel very good versus shielding champions. Champs like Lulu, champs like Ivern, Serpent's Fang feels great. Or Edge of Night versus Hard Engage. So champs like Gragas, champions like Vi, if you can block the ulti with the shield, it'll feel great. But if they have a really easy way to pop the shield anyway, a poke champion, it won't be that good. Even Vi, if they're good, they can smite you on the way with their ulti and pop the shield. So I wouldn't really go Edge of Night, it's just an option. Most of the time it will be Shroud's Grudge. And the reason I have Stopwatch here is because if you're versus a hard engage comp, say let's say they have Jarvan Rumble, something like that, you'll probably need Stopwatch by 2 items. And I wouldn't get it before 2 because you don't really do enough damage to warrant them focusing you so hard. But anytime after 2 items where you feel like you're vulnerable, where you, let's say you base, you don't have flash, you're versus Jarvan, then look to get a Stopwatch. It's going to keep you alive for the next team fight and really help you get your damage down. And to round off your build, Spear of Shojin feels the best as a 4th item, because if you have this item with a Grudge and CD boots, you can actually get 2 Shock Blasts out of 1 gate. And I'll show that in the abilities, tips and tricks section later on, but it's a pretty cool trick you can do. And it gives you a bit of HP as well, the item feels quite nice. Other than that, you can go to a Stopwatch from this point and a GA if you need it. If you feel like you're just getting permanently hard engaged on, they have a Fed Assassin, Talon or Zed, the full GA can feel quite good. Or like we talked about before, Edge of Night if you need the shield, or Serpent's Fang if you need the shield pin. And as for the full build examples, I've only got one this time because the Jayce build is very simple. If you were to literally copy this build item from item in all of your games, it's never going to be bad. Of course there's some optimizations and we've covered all of them, but this is what your build should be looking like most of the time. Up next, we're going to be covering the laning phase, and for my first example, I have a game here where Zeus, one of the best Jaces in the world, is up against a Yone and Korean Challenger. Now, it wouldn't let me watch the VOD as it's on an old patch, but luckily it was uploaded here from B Challenger, a channel on YouTube where he uploads Korean Challenger VODs. Very useful, but in general, a good way to learn matchups is just to look it up on YouTube. Look up Jayce vs Yone, Jayce vs whatever matchup you want to see, KR Challenger solo queue, whatever you want to type in, and most of the time, there will be a matchup that you can watch. Now, there are some bad ones where they get a couple kills level 1, but if you look hard enough, you will be able to find a good VOD. And that's what I've got here, an example where the concept I want to teach for Jayce laning, the most important part of it is 100 to 0 trading. So if you're playing a champion like Jax or Renekton, you could be used to jumping onto your opponent and both of you trading damage, where on Jayce that is not the case. On Jayce you want to be taking 100 to 0 trades where you're lowering their HP bar and they're not doing anything to yours. I'll start the game, I'll link the channel down below if you want to check them out, but here Zeus is up against a Yone, where Jayce vs Yone it's a skill matchup. Now if both of these champions are half HP, you could definitely imagine it's Yone favored, because this champion is a lot stronger all-in than Jayce, he's a lot of CC, where Jayce, his all-in has to be instant. He has to burst them down and kill them straight away, which is very hard when it's easy for Yone to cancel Jayce's hammer Q, with Yone's Q his ult, maybe even dodge it with his E. In general, both of these champions, if they're low HP, Yone is going to be favored. Where here you notice Zeus, he's doing one auto attack going to the bush, one auto going to the bush, he's not letting the minions hit him, dropping the aggro, and he's not going close enough that Yone can hit him. Here you notice Yone hits Q3, about to hit 2, so Zeus is sitting back. He does not want to take any damage at all. Now, you might be thinking that applies to a lot of champions, but it's especially so for Jayce, because if you're lower HP on Renekton, you can sustain it back, you have a lot more all-in threat, you can even pop ulti later on, but Jayce, you don't really have any escapes. You don't really have any avenues, to bail you out of a bad situation if you're low HP, apart from your teleport. So you really need to be playing these lanes 100 to 0 trading. That is the concept I want you to burn into your brain. You want to be doing damage to your opponent without taking any in return. And here he's just playing the lane as normal, 100 to 0 trading, letting the wave come in, and eventually he's going to start to do more damage. Because he let the Yone push in this situation, but later on he's going to start to play more aggressive. So I'll skip forward a little bit, where he's just last hitting. I'm pretty sure Yone might have even cheater recalled. Nope, he's just respecting a gank. And here he's just looking to keep that up, 100 to 0 trading. He'll show this time to time again in this matchup. And eventually, once he's gotten his opponent low enough and he's high HP, that's when he looks to punish. Punish by either making them base or killing them, where he doesn't really want to be doing that when they're higher HP. So I'll skip forward a bit here. You notice another shock blast staying in the bush, staying high HP. He's still got his pot this whole time. The only damage he has really taken is from Yone's W, where not much counterplay to that spell. If you've vested Yone in top lane before, you know how broken that spell can be. And other than that, he's not really taken any damage at all, because he's dropping the minion aggro as soon as he can if the minions are on him by going into the bush. Just dropping one auto attack, not greeting for that second auto, letting the minions hit him in return. He's okay with just doing that 100 to 0 trade. He doesn't want to have a 200 to 100 trade, for example, 100 to 0. And I'm reiterating it time and time again, because it's the most important concept for laning on Jayce, so it's something I want you to take away from this guide. And here, of course, more and more damage, Qs for some CS, gets level 5, and eventually he's going to look to punish this guy when he's lower HP. So here, of course, now Yone has no E, it's going to be a lot easier for him. Shock Blast, drop the tower aggro, don't take damage from that. Just taking 100 0 trades, the only damage he's really taken is from Ws. He still has his pot, he still has 2 cookies, and eventually when this Yone is low enough, he's going to look to punish. Where I'm pretty sure it's coming up soon, I've watched this a couple times. Where here, he's going to wait for the Yone Q3 to wear out. And now he's going to go back to trading. He's not auto-attacking him when Yone has Q3, because he really doesn't want to be taking any damage. Where, in my opinion, he should pop his pot by now, but he doesn't feel like he needs to, respect to him. But here, he's going to be doing more and more damage to this Yone, burning his spells, and eventually he's going to look to punish him. And now that he's getting the Yone low enough, he is going to look for his punish timer. It's coming up soon, where here he gets his auto attacks down, stacks his Conqueror, Hammer Q, Flash Auto E. Unfortunately, he didn't get the kill there, those mechanics were clean, but I'm pretty sure he picks it up later on. Here he hits that Kobe max range snipe, good stuff. But in general, the main reason he got this kill, the main reason he is winning his lane, is because for the majority of it, he was playing 100 to 0 trades. He was taking no damage himself or damaging the Yone, and then when the Yone was low enough, then he looked for the kill. For my next example, I'm just going to show the early lane of this one. It's Kana up against Broken Blade, Jayce vs Renekton, where this is a skill matchup as well, which is favored for Renekton in lower elo brackets, but favored for Jayce and Challenger and above. But even in competitive, you're okay with playing Renekton into Jayce, because you're going to be offering a ton of gank setup for your team, and you can sustain a ton of his poke. We're here kinda, as you notice, the same as Zeus, full HP, poking down Broken Blade, and something else you'll notice is he's taken Conqueror this game as well, and he started his W, which is a really good tool you can use with Jayce if you take Conqueror, because you can just look to stack it really quickly by utilizing the W. And we'll touch on it a bit later, but if you use your W in melee form as well, you can stack Conqueror twice as fast, but the reason Kana's not doing so is because that means Broken Blade will hit him back. He doesn't really want to be taking damage, and even there, he makes Renekton EQ'd him, but he didn't give him range for the auto. The EQ damage is not really, not optional, he's going to take it, but he's removing all the unnecessary damage in forms of auto attack, and if he were to have auto attacked him himself, hammer form in, bash him down with the melee W, he's not really he's gonna be taking damage even though he's doing damage in return. So he's just staying as high HP as he can, chunking down Broken Blade, punishing his aggressive movements. He's not really punishing him so much that he's walking up to him and fighting him. He's punishing him for CS and short trades, and punishing him for long trades when the Renekton is trying to play aggressive onto him. As you can see from this point, he's burned the pot, he's got him half HP. Renekton is really struggling in this lane so far, where eventually he's going to get lower and lower and he's going to have to base for a subpar item. Where here, Hammer Form Q took no damage in return. These really short trades where he's taking no damage in return is the most important cornerstone to playing Jayce in your laning phase. Where eventually he's going to gain an advantage from it, so I'm going to speed it up a little bit, chuck it on 2x. 4x is a bit quick. Where now Renekton's feeling pressured, right? Low HP he's frozen on, and now Kano's playing a bit more aggressive because the Rel is on his side of the map now. He sees his junglers protecting him, and now he's just standing between the waves and him, but he's still not taking damage. That is the most important part about laning on Jayce, and the main thing I want you to take away. And I'm going to end this lane now. As you can see, he's already won the matchup, but the main reason he did so is because he's taking 100-0 trades. Now for my final example, I have a game where I played Jayce recently in solo queue, and I showcased the second most important part about playing Jayce in the laning phase, and that is be okay with being ganked. Be willing to absorb pressure for your team, because if you play Jayce top lane, you are going to get ganked most of the time. That is just reality. You are a very free kill if you're playing disrespectfully, so you need to embrace that fact. You need to play around that and embrace it, because impacting the game as a top laner can feel quite tough. It's hard for you to gank mid or to gank bot, really to help your team from top lane because you're so isolated, but a huge way you can help your team is by wasting the enemy jungler's time. Now, on Olaf and Darius, you sort of do that by running at them on their buff, trying to kill them, but on Jayce, you don't really look to do that. On Jayce, you just look to win your lane, of course, play your lane the way Zeus and Kana were doing so, 100-0 trading, and draw the jungler to you. Be willing to waste his time, try to keep an eye onto him, and this will help you a lot in terms of your growth as a player. It's going to improve your jungle tracking, because on Jayce, playing around the jungle is very important. Here, I'm not even trading that well in this game, to be honest, not 100-0, more 100-30. I'm still winning my trades, but it's not the best, but I played the second concept very well. The second concept of playing around the enemy jungler, where here, my jungler is playing Graves, useless champion for top lane, and also they have a Rengar who is clearing up. My Graves are clearing down, there's no way he's going to counter gank or help me, so here I know I want to be poking this Cassandra into tower, I would love to, but I'm scared of Rengar. Where here, instead of trying to poke Cassandra into tower, I instead am trying to absorb this Rengar's pressure, where I use my ward level 1 to gain a big health advantage, so now I'm just looking to find him. I'm finding him on his blue, I even try to steal it here, but my main point is I am playing to not be punished. Rengar puffed up, Graves puffed down, so in theory, Graves should get something bot. Of course, that's not always going to be the case, but that's the theory of it. And the Rengar should be trying to get something top in return. And because I'm playing a vulnerable champion, Jayce vs Cassandra, who of course he has a ton of CC, if I play to waste this Rengar's time, then I'm helping my team in a different way. Where against Rengar specifically, he's going to be looking to lane gank. I've known that. I've versed Rengar many times. His champion can't really just flank without a bush, right? So that's why in this case I ward the bush, level 1. Not level 1, sorry. I ward the bush here so that I can prevent his lane gank. Now, you don't have to know exactly what each champion does. You just need to play around the fact that they could be top when they're puffing up, and play accordingly. Because you really don't want to be losing your flash on Jayce. That means they're going to repeat gank you almost 100% of the time. Where if you can survive their first gank without losing any HP, losing flash and wasting their time, they're going to feel a lot less inclined to gank you, which means you're going to have a lot more freedom to play your lane out. So here, of course, like I said, ward the bush so that Rengar can't lane gank me, and now my wave is pushing back towards him, which is a huge time a jungler should be thinking about, because that's something important I want to cover, where as a top laner, you should know when your lane opponent is vulnerable or when you are vulnerable, right? If they crash a big wave like Cassandra did here, my wave is going to bounce back, which means soon I'm going to be vulnerable. You know that as a top laner, you should think that the junglers know that, because even though they're just farming grumps and wolves, right, they don't have to look at the screen. They can be looking at all the lanes and seeing the best place to go to, so you should treat your jungler with more respect, the enemy jungler with more respect, because they're not NPCs, some of them might be, but they are looking at the screen as well. They see when you're vulnerable and when you're safe, and here I'm in a vulnerable position, so Rengar's here. But I'm pretty sure that he's here because he pathed top, and here I'm playing accordingly. I've got the ward in the bush, I'm not giving Cassante range, I'm keeping my distance, but as you notice, I'm not playing too safe. I'm not sitting back in my tower shock blasting the wave. I want Rengar to come. I do want him here. Here I stop his base as well, wasting his time. That's the reason I want him here. I want to waste his time, and here I'm sitting far away from the bush. I'm not letting him gain anything. So the important thing is to not play super safe when the jungler is here. It's to master the line. The line is where you're playing aggressive, winning your matchup, but not giving the jungler any opportunity. Up next we have ability tips and tricks and comboing, and my first tip is with the range Q, you can actually Q flash to make it a lot harder for them to react and dodge it. You can also use your Q to cancel your auto attack animation in the range form and also the hammer form. The melee form Q can also be used to buffer through crowd control such as stuns. Jaxi is a great example, but it's not going to work on knockups. You will be cancelled by Gragassi, Sejuani Q, any knockup ability. If your Q animation started, they will cancel it, but if you time your Q just as you're getting stunned, you'll get the animation and the damage off while you're CC'd. The next tip is probably not the most useful, but it's the most fun, where you can cancel the melee form Q animation with dancing. If you hammer form Q into control 3 whilst you're in midair, it's going to cancel the animation and hide the swing of the hammer, and you're still going to get the damage down. Now, it can be useful, I guess, when you're queuing onto the backline casters, trying to get a Q onto them, but for the most part, it's not going to be the most useful, but it is the most fun. The melee form hammer Q can also be used to get over walls, which can be very useful for securing an escape. In regards to using your range Q, the most important piece of advice is, of course, you want to be shooting it through the gate, but you want to put your gate on your body. You want to Q the direction you want to be shooting it in, and then quickly move your mouse back to your character and E through your body. So that you gain the movement speed straight away, your Q is going to be getting shot out of the extra move speed as fast as possible, and it's going to be a lot harder for them to dodge it. And the next level up to that is the Q Flash E, where we talked about it before, of course you can Q Flash, but if you Q Flash, quickly move your mouse back to your character, E through the body, you're going to get the extra range and damage, but you can also use it to jump over minions with the flash and hit your target when they're trying to block it. Another tip with the Hammer Q is it's actually quite a powerful AoE ability, so if your lane opponent is sitting out of your Hammer Q range, but they're behind your casters, if you Q the casters and they're close enough, the AoE damage and the slowing effect are still going to hit them. Now, I briefly mentioned in the item section of the guide, but once you have a 100 ability haste on Jayce, you can actually shoot 2 shock blasts through a single gate, which is of course very powerful, not only in the sense where you're getting more damage more often, but most people when they play against Jayce, once you miss a shock blast or shoot the first one, they're probably not going to expect it for a while. They're going to be thinking you're waiting for your gate cooldown, but if you have 100 haste or more, you can shoot a second Q, which is why Spirit Shojin is so powerful on it. Moving on to Jayce's W. Now the range W is actually an auto attack reset, so you should be looking to get an auto attack off before you press W when you're fighting them in range form. Now with the range W, the bonus attack speed you gain, if you press W first and then switch to hammer form, you'll actually get the bonus attack speed whilst you're in your hammer form, which can be very useful because you'll be stacking Conqueror twice as fast. A skill you should be looking to implement with the range W is spacing, and it works in melee form as well, but essentially you want to be trying to move in between auto attacks. It's a really good habit to get into, it's going to improve your spacing, and the time you have between autos is a lot shorter, of course, when you have the W on, but if you can get the hang of it, not only is it going to look clean, but it's really going to help you with kiting your opponent or chasing them down. And as for the hammer form W, something you should know about it is if you have W skilled and you're auto attacking a minion in hammer form, you will actually gain passive mana back per auto attack, which can be quite useful if you're low on mana in lane and your lane opponent's respecting or they're not even in lane. You can regen mana, which is also why you should be beating down the tower with hammer W if you're not scared of anyone coming as well, because you're going to be gaining mana back as well at the same time. Moving on to Jayce's E, and I'll start with the range E where you gain movement speed as you walk through it, and a way to abuse this a step further is whilst you're walking around the map or walking back to lane, where you don't really need to, think about fighting your opponent, you should be placing it long ways across your body so you're walking through it for more often, so you're gaining movement speed for a longer amount of time. As for the hammer E, there's a lot of cool tricks you can do with this, where you can actually cancel your auto attack animation with the E, but you can also take that the next step further, where you can of course auto E if you wanted to, but there are a lot of situations where it's better to E auto, where you want to be getting them off you as fast as possible, where you can actually E, and if you time it right, you'll be getting an auto attack whilst they're flying away. Another cool thing about Jayce's E is it's actually really good at stopping dashes, where even if a Camille or a Zac, for example, jumps through you or jumps past you, once you've started your E animation, they're going to get knocked back from where they originally were at the start of your animation. And the same logic applies to you, where you can E-flash on this ability, but it's not going to change the direction in which they're being knocked back to. They're going to be getting knocked back from the direction where you started your E animation, so even if you flash behind them, it's not really going to change that, but you're still going to get the damage down. So it's not that useful, but you can E-flash away from an opponent if you want to create more distance, but other than that, I would stay away from it. Another cool trick you can do with your E is you can actually use it to survive ganks, where if you're being ganked from behind, you can E them towards your tower and jump to them, which is going to be really beneficial for closing distance towards your tower. And you're also knocking them into tower range, of course. There are a lot of situations that this is useful. Also escaping a Jarvan ult. If Jarvan ults, you can E him out of it, Q to him. There are just many situations where Eing someone to a direction you want to go and then hammer queuing onto them is going to benefit you. And as for Jayce's ultimate, it's pretty straightforward. However, there are some things you should know about it, where once you change form, you're going to be gaining a temporary burst of movement speed, so you should be using that to get around the map, get back to lane, or even run away from your opponent. Another thing is the range form. Once you just change to range form, your first auto attack is going to lower your target's resistances. So it's really good to start off your combo after lowering their armor, and the melee form also gains bonus damage on hit on the first auto attack after changing to melee form. Moving on to combos, and we'll start with Jayce's most common trading combo in lane, and that is the Hammer Form Q Auto E, where you're going to be doing a big chunk of damage and there's not much room for them to re-engage onto or trade damage back into you in return. The next combo is Jayce's Disengage combo, where if somebody engages onto you in lane, you're going to be leading with Hammer E, knock them away, into Auto, of course E Auto, the combo we talked about before, E Auto Q with your melee form on, change into your range form, and then you want to lead with an Auto W reset like we talked about, and then you want to be shooting your 3 auto attacks down and waiting for the right time to shoot your Shock Blast, because a lot of people will be trying to dodge it, but they slowed from the Q as well, so if you have Conqueror, of course you want to wait till you get your autos down, stack up your Conqueror, and then shoot the Shock Blast at the end of the combo. That is the most optimal disengage combo, but if you're in range form when they jump onto you, which is more likely, the disengage combo, you're going to lead with your Shock Blast into Auto W, and you don't want to be shooting the second auto attack from the W reset, because you're going to be wasting time where they're hitting you. You want to instantly switch to your Hammer form, E Auto, of course cancel the E animation with an Auto, and then you have the option. You can either jump onto their head with QW and beat them down with the other 3 autos from your range W, or you can walk away, depending on how much HP you have, if you have kill threat, but essentially that's what the disengage combo is going to look like. A fast combo you can do when somebody's over a wall and you want to be looking to execute them is start with your Shock Blast and then flash the wall before the Shock Blast is even connected, switch into your Hammer form, QW onto them, and then you can either Auto E or E Auto, depending on how good you're feeling. And the final combo is Jayce's max damage combo, where you want to be leading with QE into AW, switching into your ulti form, QW, AAA, beat them down with your auto attacks essentially from the W, and then you can finish off with E or even an E auto depending on how much damage you need. But most of the time, if you're using this combo when someone's face checking you, you won't even need those final auto attacks, it really depends on who's checking. Up next, we're going to be covering the matchups. Now, before we begin, I did want to preface this by saying these matchups are weighted more towards high elo, because even though in general I try to make these matchup tier lists in terms of all elo brackets, because Jayce is such a high skill cap champion, his tier list is more weighted towards high elo, because the better you are at this champion, the better the matchups are going to be for you. And let's say you're playing Jayce in silver or gold, for example, and you're an amazing Jayce player, you're going to win basically every matchup regardless, so that's why. Now, in general, on Jayce, the only hard matchup in my opinion is Malphite. Of course, a lot of matchups are quite difficult, but in terms of a matchup where there's very little counterplay, if the Malphite knows what he's doing, then of course that's the one. Where in terms of pure 1v1, if you're playing a custom game, it's actually fine for Jayce. I would say it's Jayce favored in terms of pure 1v1, however that's not reality, that's not the game, where their jungler is going to be looking at you as a free kill. Every time Malphite has ulti, they're going to look to gank you, and it's very easy for Malphite to trade. If you try to auto attack him, he can throw a Q out, of course prop comment as well, and it's very easy for him to chunk down your HP, but it's very hard for you to take 100 to trades against Malphite. It's very hard for you to survive ganks against him, which are the 2 main cornerstones to Jayce laning, so that's why this matchup is the hardest. Now, lucky for you, Malphite's the only champion in that tier, the hard tier, so you can just ban him if you don't want to deal with that, so we'll move on to the opponent-sided tier list, where these champions are the ones where they have a ton of threat onto you. It's really hard for you to survive, let alone 1v1, but against jungle ganks as well, because these champions just have so much agency to get onto you. Where my biggest advice for playing these matchups, in my opinion, is spacing. Where if you verse Irelia and Yorick, for example, if they hit an E onto you, you are probably going to die or get chunked. However, if you're spacing them, auto-attacking them down whilst dodging their skill shots, utilizing your gate movement speed, where as they're about to Irelia is about to E you, or Yorick's about to E you, for example, you can place your gate on top of you and use that movement speed to dodge it whilst auto-attacking them, then you're probably going to have a good time in this matchup, which is why it's very skillful on the Jayce side, but it's in their favor, because it's a lot easier for Irelia just to Q to a caster, chuck an E onto you, and if it hits, she's going to beat you up. If it doesn't, she'll Q away, and same with Yorick, he'll just keep fishing for E's until he hits one. So it's not unwinnable, the matchup, by any means, it's just in their favor, which is why it's in that tier. Moving down to the skill matchup tier, now these are the matchups that are the most fun because the most skilled player should win it, and of course there's some variables if their jungler's giving you a hard time of course, but for the most part in terms of pure 1v1 you should be okay in these matchups, where versus Kennen for example, Your QE range is a lot longer than his Q range, so it's very easy for you to poke him down. However, he's got the benefit of just being able to flash ult onto you with a jungle gank. So he has the ease of execution in this matchup, and also if you walk towards him and auto attack him, he's gonna, Q you, of course. His auto attacks are stronger if he has W up. So it's a skill matchup for sure. You need to be abusing your range, trying to either shock blast minions and hit them at the same time, or even melee Q casters, hit them like we talked about before. That's essentially that's the way you win that matchup, and all of these matchups have win conditions like that, where versus Olaf, you really need to be playing around your phase rush cooldown. You can't really be poking them down at all without phase rush, or you can just flash Q onto you and you're dead. And all these matchups have skillful aspects to it, and once you learn them, you're really going to start to take over. Now, as for the Jayce favored matchups, these are the ones where you should be gaining an advantage in some way, whether that be through a pure 1v1 advantage or from making them cry for their jungler, making them come up, push out the way for them. You should be looking to gain an advantage, and if you don't, you need to be reviewing the VOD and seeing where you went wrong, because these matchups are quite easy for Jayce if you understand them, but of course if you're playing a matchup for the first time, you probably won't understand it, so it's best to review your game, break down what goes wrong. And to give an example, let's say you're versus Cassante. Now, the way you play Viscasante is you want to be abusing him before he can get to Iceborn. If he gets his Iceborn, he's probably going to beat you down, so you'll be running Concrete in this lane because he's very tanky, and you want to have the extra damage, the extra burst if he ults you, because of course he's squishier in that form, but does a lot more damage, and you want to be abusing your strong level 1. You want to be starting W with Concrete, auto-attacking him down, auto with the reset, and you want to be poking him down, making him base early just to buy a Ruby Crystal, and just trying to poke him down, get him low, and look to execute him later on in the lane, and if he ever ults onto you, he should be low at that point from your poke, and then you should be able to win that 1v1. And as for the free matchups, these are the ones that are quite easy, where you could even run first strike if you wanted to, be super greedy and just bully them down, farming gold off them, making them recall. However, I don't want you to go into these lanes thinking, alright, it's in the free matchup section, I'm going to play disrespectfully, I'm going to hammer form onto them, try to solo kill them. You still want to be following the two main laning concepts we talked about, where you still want to be taking 100 to 0 trades, lowering their HP, staying high yourself, and still respecting the jungle, playing to absorb his pressure, waste his time, because if you don't, even if you're versus Singe for example, and you're both half HP, he can just flash flip you and you're dead to a gank, and you're not going to gain that advantage that you should be. To wrap it up, I strongly recommend you guys study how to play out these matchups after you've played them. Review your game, write down what you did, and write down what you think you should be doing better, and that's the best way to improve upon it. I could go through every matchup 1v1, but in my opinion, that's not the best way for growth, because this game is ever changing, they're going to change items, they're going to change champions, matchups are going to be played out differently in a couple months from now, a couple years from now, the matchups are going to be ever changing, so it's best for you to learn as a player how to play them out by reviewing, studying your games, maybe even looking up VODs of how the matchups played in pro play or solo queue, and learn from that, and then apply it to your own gameplay. Up next, we're going to be covering the mid game, and to simplify it, I've broken it down into 3 steps. The first one being you want to neutralize side and then look to group and poke, because a huge mistake I see people make on Jayce is they overplay the side lane. Where yes, you are pretty strong 1v1, you're pretty strong at taking towers, but that's just not reality. You're not playing Jax where you can survive a gank. If I were to have pushed bot in this game, even though I can beat Fiora, I will get killed from this Nocturne instantly. So in this case, I neutralize side lane and I look to group and poke, where typically for lane assignments you'll be putting the top laner on the side opposite the next objective, where on Jayce this is very risky, but that's just the reality of your champion, because if I send Seraphine bot in this example, he is definitely going to die. Now, there are some variables where if your mid laner is playing Yone or Irelia, you can send them down bot and you can play top and be protected from your team. That feels quite nice, but most of the time, you are going to have a control mage mid, which means you need to play side opposite next objective, and you need to follow that rule, where you just want to neutralize side, push it to even or one wave past even, and then look to group and poke with your team. And in this example, I push one wave past side bot, which means I'm not losing my bot tower right now. It's not urgent, it takes Akshan in this example a long time to get to it, and we're just grouping on this objective, poking them as they walk in, looking to start a fight, and eventually we win this situation. Because I was here first, I neutralized side lane, and we're not losing anything in return. Akshan does eventually get the bot here too, but because I pushed out the wave before I came here, he's not on our inhib right now, so we actually win in this trade, right? We traded bot tier 2 for Baron, which is definitely worth, but if I didn't neutralize side before doing this, we would have lost a lot more. Step 2 for the mid game is be at the neutral objectives early, ready to poke. You don't want to arrive to your dragon as it's spawning or even 10 seconds before. You need to be there around 45 to 60 seconds before it's even spawned, so that you have a chance to poke them. You want them to be low HP before you take a team fight. You don't want to have a straight 5v5 where everyone's high HP. You want to be utilizing your champions long range to poke down your opponents, and you can only do that if you're there ahead of time, which means you need to be setting up your side wave so you don't need to deal with it as dragon spawning. So here in this example, I actually communicate to my team where normally I like to play with chat off, but on Jayce it's pretty important because you can't poke them down by yourself. It's important your team knows what's going on, and even if they didn't listen to me, I would change my plan. But in this example, they do, where a lot of people tunnel on playing for Dragon and solo queue, but in this example, I choose to fully give Dragon for control of Baron, where control of Baron is extremely valuable because if they don't check you, eventually you're just going to take the Baron. Or if they do check you, they're walking into Jayce's poke, you have a lot of burst, of course here I do the fast combo, and it's very easy to look for picks or even really good chunks onto the opponent so that you can secure the neutral objective for free. Now, before I say step 3, keep in mind step 1 and 2 are the most important by far. Overplaying the side lane is the biggest mistake on Jayce. However, step 3 is use your TP for tempo, where of course you're going to be taking TP on Jayce almost every time, and it's really good for laning phase. But after lane, you don't really want to be using your TP to TP late to a fight, right? You want to be there early to poke, you don't want to TP flank on Jayce, so the best way to use your TP is TPing for tempo. TPing so that you're on the map faster so you can pressure the map as fast as possible. Up next, we're going to be covering team fighting, and yet again, I'll break it down to 3 steps for you. Step 1 being, you want to be kiting back and playing around your cooldowns. Where here in this example, I had a shock blast on the backline, and now I'm kiting back. Kite back, play around your cooldowns, I'm waiting for my next rotation of spells, and then once it's back up again, once my shock blast is up, I use it to secure a kill on the backline. And then after that, while my spells are on cooldown, I'm kiting back yet again, kiting back, and eventually I see an opportunity to go forward with your hammer form, where the main point of this is you want to be kiting back, playing around your shock blast cooldown, of course trying to gun them down with range auto attacks if you can. You don't really want to be starting off a fight in hammer form. You don't want to be queuing in straight away, having to wait for the 6 seconds to swap back to your range form. You really want to be playing around those cooldowns, playing around your poking cooldown, and then going in with hammer form when the time is right. Step 2 for team fighting on Jayce is threat assessment. To reach a high level of mastery on this champion, you really need to improve your threat assessment. You need to be seeing a loading screen and champ select which spells are going to be threatening to you and play around them. Where here in this example they have Gragas and Nautilus just uses Q. So as soon as his hook is on cooldown, I'm playing extremely aggressive, I know he has no flash as well, and now I'm waiting for his next Q. As soon as he uses it on Bard, that's when I hammer form Q. I don't want to queue in, get stopped by Gragas, stopped by Nautilus, get CC locked, get shot down by ZMF. I need to be playing around their cooldowns. I need to play around the most threatening abilities, and when they're on cooldown, I can play more aggressive, and when they're off cooldown, that's the time when you need to be more respectful and play for poke on the backline. And the third piece of advice for team fighting on Jayce is hold your spells. I'm not saying hold them all the time for no reason, I'm saying hold them until you know for sure they're gonna hit. Where here I'm playing around my cooldowns, of course, not going in until my team's ready and until my cooldown's back up. And now you'll see later on as they're chasing us, of course I use my Q here to kill the Gragas, and now we're kiting out. I'm pretty low HP at this point, I've got a ton of gold, I don't want to be stuck in this fight, and now you notice I have my shock blast up, but I don't want to poke this Nautilus for 200, 300 damage right now, I want to hold it until the time is right. I'm holding my spells until the right opportunity arises, and here I'm able to hit 2 of them, hit the GP as well, and then get the kill, and I'm able to do a lot more damage. Where in this example specifically, to be honest, I probably would have killed the Nautilus anyway, or if I poked him before, maybe he wouldn't have committed there. Maybe he wouldn't have played more aggressive and given us the kill if I'd used my shock blast earlier and already got him low HP. So in this example, it doesn't give us the biggest benefit, of course it works out well, but the main point is you want to be holding your spells until you know they're going to hit for sure, and not just shock blasting the Ornn frontline, the Nautilus, whatever you see. You want to be holding it until the time is right. Up next, we're going to be covering Jayce's identity and the mindset you should adapt when playing this champion. Now, the biggest mistake I see Jayce players make in terms of their identity is they think, oh, I'm just a lane bully, I want to be playing my lane as aggressive as possible. Which is true, you are very powerful in lane and you can bully a ton of these melee champions, but that doesn't mean you should hyper-focus on that aspect. The point is, you are so strong at laning, but your champion is also very vulnerable, so it's very easy for you to draw pressure from the enemy jungler. Your lane opponent especially is going to be spamming you for help, he's going to be crying if you're playing lane quite well, if you're full HP and he's low, and it's going to be very hard for the enemy jungler to gank you if that's the case. Because I learned a lot, especially from playing with my jungler, and he says that when you're asking for a gank, if your lane state is horrible, that is the worst time for a jungle to gank, because he's ganking for you, you're 1 HP, you have to base anyway, he has to help you shove out the wave, you're sharing XP, that is just not ideal. So on Jayce, you want to be abusing your strong laning phase power to make the enemy jungler gank you and waste his time. You don't want to be low HP and have him just walk in and one-shot you, collect a free kill at the end of his path. You want to make him work for it, make him work hard to burn your flash or to kill you, waste his time throughout the process, because if he doesn't, you're just going to dominate his top laner, and you're going to be taking very smart trades to do so. The second and the cornerstone to Jayce's identity as a champion is he's a very powerful poking champion. The reality is, from top lane, we don't really have many choices for poke champs. If we verse a champ like Zyra Khan, for example, and we have to play a bruiser like Renekton, play Jax and run into it, it's not going to feel very good most of the time. But lucky for us, we have a couple poke champs, mainly Jayce and GP, and Jayce is the best. So if you play against champions like Syndra, champs like Zyra, where it's hard to run straight at them, and you have Jayce in your champ pool, you need to be utilizing your poke. Because if you're fighting full HP versus full HP, you're not really using your champ. So to do so, you need to make sure you're arriving at these objectives early, getting your poke down, making them walk in, make it really hard for them to do damage. Because champs like Syndra, champs like Xayah, they do a lot of damage. However, if they're poked down to half HP, they're going to feel very pressured, very scared to walk up and do so. The third point, and this ties into Jayce's mindset a lot, is side lane is not your friend. Now, of course, there will be a ton of scenarios where you can actually use the side lane to break towers and gain gold. Let's say your lane opponent TPs away, or you see the jungler on the map wasting time. I'm not saying you're never going to be able to use the side lane. That's not the case. What I'm saying is, your default shouldn't be viewing the side lane as a win condition. Your default should be viewing your champion, arriving at an objective early, poking them down, arriving mid lane, and poking down the enemy bot lane as your win condition. Because, in general, if an opponent is 1 HP, that is essentially the same as them being dead, because they can't really teamfight anymore. Anyone can just flash auto them and kill them, so they have to base. So if you arrive mid when both, your AD carry and support versus their AD carry and support trying to get mid push, you get a shock blast off, you get them to half HP. Now it's very hard for them to get mid pro, which means it's easy for your team to control the map. And if you're to play the side lane too aggressive, and you don't see where their jungler is, you're not playing it very, very calculated, you're gonna die. You can get lane ganked, you can get nocturne altered, anything. It's very easy for them to punish you in side lane, which is why your default should be using your champion to bring your poking ability to either neutral objectives or poking them down on mid tower. Next point being, you spike extremely hard at 2 to 3 items, so you should be looking to abuse that. In the past, a lot of people would say Jayce scales terribly, which was true. In the past, Jayce used to build Blade of the Ruined King or Black Cleaver, which felt horrible. However, modern day Jayce scales quite well. However, you do start to fall off a little bit around 5 to 6 items. I won't say fall off as in you become weak, it's just you spike the hardest at 2 to 3 items. Because if you're 2 to 3 and the AD carry and everyone else in the game is 2 to 3, you're going to be one of the strongest champions in the game as long as you're not far behind, so you should be looking to abuse that. You should be looking to pull up to Baron, looking to get vision, poke them as they walk in, like I showed in the mid-game section of the guide, and using your strength while you're at your strongest. Now, to wrap it up, I've put a general game plan down the bottom that you can follow, but the biggest mindset change I want you to adapt on Jayce in the early game is you should be trying to gain dopamine from wasting the enemy jungler's time. Because the biggest problem in top lane, not a biggest problem, but a big problem a lot of top laners face, is that they only gain their dopamine from winning their lane, from getting solo kills, and I suffered from this myself for the longest time, but you should be gaining dopamine and feeling good about wasting the enemy jungler's time. Because if you can imagine a game of League where you never get ganked as a top laner, it's gonna feel pretty good. So keep in mind that all the time you're wasting of the enemy jungler, where he's not killing you, where he's just getting your flash even, or he's just pushing in the way for his opponent, that means your jungle, your mid, your bot lane, they are all playing the game without an enemy jungler to worry about, so they are able to play as aggressive as they want and trying to punish. Now, of course, they're not always going to win lane because of what you're doing, but your win chance is going to be a lot higher if you gain dopamine from wasting the enemy jungler's time and see that as a win condition. Up next, I'm going to be covering a full game review and talking you through my thought process throughout this entire game, where in this game, I'm up against a Darius top and a Nocturne jungle, so I ward level 1. Where normally, Nocturne does want a full clear, however that doesn't mean he can't 3 camp. He's not a Lily, he's not a Hecarim, his 3 camp's not terrible. He can take red buff, he can take Krugs into Raptors and gank top if I play aggressive. And in this matchup versus Darius, I want to make sure I get level 2 first. Because if he gets level 2, it's very easy for him to walk towards me, pressure hook, and I want to be maintaining high CS. I don't want to be zoned off CS on Jayce, melee versus range. I really want to be taking 100-0 trades, unlike this one, and I just want to be keeping high CS and poking him down. Because in my opinion, it's unrealistic that I can kill Darius as Jayce early game. You're not really going to solo kill a Darius as Jayce level 2, level 3, especially he's got Doran Shield second win. That's just unrealistic, unless he does something completely terrible. Where here, I did take a bad trade, however he did burn his Ghost in return, and my jungler ganks me here, which is not necessary, but we do burn his Flash. Now, Nocturne counter ganks as well, like I talked about before. His champion does want to be full clearing most of the time, but he can be a part of these plays. He can gank, he can counter gank, which is why I wanted level 1. And now I'm not too worried, because Darius right here, he has no TP, and I do, which means the win condition for me in this game, which is something they can apply to all champions in all games, when you verse a champion that doesn't have TP, the win condition should change from I want to solo kill this guy, you should change it to I want to keep this guy trapped in the lane. because my kill threat on him is a lot lower. Of course, he's playing Darius, but also because he has 2 combat summoner spells. So it's the same if you versed Ignite Pantheon or Ignite Jax, anything like this. You want to be playing to keep them stuck in the lane, because they cannot recall without TP, without losing a lot. If you have a huge wave under their tower, or you're freezing, making them lose CS, you want to make it so that when they base, they lose a lot, and then if they don't want to lose a lot, they're stuck in the lane, unable to buy items, unable to regen. So that concept is going to help you a lot in all your games, but especially on Jayce, because Jayce really does well in the war of attrition, where you want to be lowering your opponent's HP, getting them lower and lower, and not really tunneling on the solo kill, because if you do, you're going to be very vulnerable to being ganked. And here, that is my win condition right now. I want to keep him trapped in the lane. So here, that's what I'm thinking. I want to base, get my serrated Dirk, and keep him stuck in the lane. However, this guy, of course, he's a high rank player. He's not dumb. He doesn't just last hit the minions. He one-shots a wave as fast as he can and bases, because he knows he's playing Ghost Darius. He doesn't want to be trapped in the lane himself. But a lot of the players that you verse, they won't understand that concept, and they might even be stuck in the lane when you get back at this point. So you'll be able to really gain a big advantage against them, and it's something you can look to replicate in your games. So now, even though he did the correct move, he one-shot the wave, he's coming back to lane, I still gained my advantage. I based and TP'd myself, I one-shot the wave, denying him 6 creeps, I got a tower plate, I've still gained a lead in my lane, whilst this whole time, I've been unable to be ganked by their jungler. Because I had a good game plan in mind around the enemy top laner and around the enemy jungler, where I know Nocturne, he is an option to 3-camp me, so I warded accordingly, and in this game my jungler actually ganked for me as well, which was not necessary, but the Nocturne wasted his time too, so it balanced out quite well, and also I know against Darius, it's unrealistic I'm going to solo kill this guy early on in the game. I'm Phase Rush Jayce versus second Wind Orange Shield Darius, there's no way I can do meaningful damage to him to the point where I can kill him before he kills me, but before he ghosts me down, so my game plan was, of course, to keep him trapped in the lane, and that's how I've gained my advantage so far. And now, of course, I'm letting the wave come back into me, poke him when he goes for CS, and as you notice, 100 to 0 trading, I am full HP, chunking him down, I've still got my pot, the lane is going exactly as it should, and this whole time, Nocturne cannot gank me, even if he ganks me from my try right now, I'm going to phase rush out of there, jump onto his head, which is a great way to survive ganks as Jayce, where you can always engage on their jungler when he arrives behind you, knock him away and phase rush on out of there. And I actually ruined my wave here, which was a mistake in my opinion, but it's fine. I'm getting good trades. I'm not too worried, and I need to be respecting Nocturne 6, and as long as I do that, it's not the end of the world. Where, as you notice, every time he goes for CS, I poke him down, and I'm never giving him an opportunity to poke me back, to trade on me in turn. So here, Nocturne ultis, and of course here, phase rush on out of there, and I didn't actually need to use my flash in this situation, but the reason that I let the Nocturne ult me, as you can see, I'll go back a little bit, is because my team was coming. Where here I'm sitting very far back, I'm not walking up and poking the Darius because I'm scared of Nocturne. Nocturne can be ganking me on across the wall or through the lane, so I'm playing very respectful, and then it's not until Lee Sin and Taliyah's closer that I give him range. As you see here, look how far back I'm standing, it's not just respecting Darius, look how low he is. I'm not that scared of him. I'm respecting the Nocturne ulti, but I still want him to use his ult. I want him to waste his time on me, waste his resources. That's why I'm not sitting back and farming with Shock Blast. And now when my Taliyah and Lee Sin's close enough, then I let the Nocturne ult me. And here my flash was extremely bad. I panicked a little bit. I could have ran this out quite easily. However, my plan was good. Of course, my mechanics, could have been a bit better, could have saved my flash, my discipline was lacking, but my game plan was good. I made this Nocturne ult me, we counter-ganked it, and unfortunately, we didn't get the kill, but we're still gaining an advantage for that. Where Nocturne, if his first ult doesn't do anything, then it's got such a long cooldown, because he's not getting Ultimate Hunter, of course, from getting the takedown, so now I'm really ruining this Nocturne's game plan, whilst also winning my lane at the same time. So now my game plan coming back into the lane is to play around Herald. I've gained a 23 CS lead over this Darius, and although I'm not stronger than him in terms of a pure all-in, I can look to get him low enough to play for Herald, or at the very least if they try to play for it, I can poke them down, or even if I get vision of it for my team, they have the option to make a bot play. In general, just getting vision on Herald is really good, and that was my game plan, but I make a big mistake here. I was pretty sure Darius was there, as you see me react quite quickly, but I didn't space well enough, and he was able to get a hook onto me, and we trade 1-for-1. Now, it's not the worst thing in the world, and it was pretty close, but because I wasted my flash before when Nocturne ganked me, I shouldn't have been looking to check that try and take damage for free, right? I want to be staying high HP, because even if I survive there and we're both half HP, that's not the way I want to be playing Jayce. Where in that case, I should have used the wave, I should have just pushed the wave and made him answer it, and when he's clearing the wave, that's when I can get ward on Herald. I don't need to tunnel so hard onto it, and even if they get the Herald, it's not the worst thing in the world, right? It's not great, but it's better than what happened, where I really don't want to be taking damage on Jayce. And there, a 1-for-1 is fine, like I said, however, the most important thing is me staying high HP, so that's what I should have played for. And now I do finally get my ward on Herald, we see they're on it, which means my team has the option to make a bot play. Now, whether they take it or not, it doesn't matter. It's just important to give your team that option as a top laner because you're the lane that's right next to Herald. Your jungler's not always going to be able to do that. He has things to do. He might want to clear Gromp or gank bot. So if you can ward Herald, that's good. And here I noticed Nocturne took Herald, which means he is top side. And his ulti was back up, which is why I'm doing Krugs, which is a big reason, sorry, that I value red side Jayce so highly because if you're in a game where you feel pressured by the jungler, you can just go eat Krugs. Because from level 7 onwards, it's very easy for Jayce to do so, and if you get 2 or 3 Krug camps, you're going to have a noticeable advantage over your opponent. Where here I base for Eclipse, TP back, we kill this Irelia, and now I'm just looking to keep my current game plan, right? Stay high HP, play around the enemy jungler, and here he doesn't have Nocturne ult anymore, he just used it, so I can play more aggressive. Which ties into team fighting as well a little bit. The threat assessment is not just for team fighting, it's for the game in general, because Nocturne with no ulti, very, very low threat onto me, so I can play a lot more aggressive than if he had it up. And here Jan is also peeling me, so I'm just poking him down tower. As you see, spacing him quite nicely, not taking damage. And I do let him hook me because Jan is here, and then I'm able to hopefully get one of these guys. Hopefully both. Just one. Okay, not too shabby. And here, well, I'm just, I bait them onto me because my Jan was there. But if he wasn't, I would not have taken that damage, right? That's the general game plan you're going to see. I'm trying to stay high HP on Jayce most of the time. And then if my teammates are there to back me up, that's when I let them go onto me. The only time I made that mistake and let them go onto me for no reason, not no reason, but the only time I made the mistake of letting them go onto me at a bad time was when I was desperate to ward Herald for my team, which I shouldn't have been, right? Jayce is an inherently selfish champion. He has no CC or frontline ability, right? All he does is damage, so you need to play selfishly. I should have played to keep my HP higher, even though in return my team might have suffered if we didn't get vision of this Herald. So now just coming out, I see an opportunity mid. I've already fixed my top wave, an opportunity to roam, but I don't think it works out too well. Nope, it doesn't. That's okay. So now I just want to go back top, right? Neutralize side, rotate mid, and although it's not officially mid-game yet, I still need to be in my lane. Tower plates are still up. It's fine to look for these opportunities once in a while, as long as you don't lose too much, but there I actually regret it because I did lose a play. And in general, the time mid-game is over. It's going to vary from game to game, especially in low elo brackets. You'll be in your laning phase a lot longer. But in general, when tower plates have fallen, that's when it's more okay to roam around the map and look to change your lane assignments. Here, Nocturne drops Herald from me, and now, right, Nocturne's top, he probably has ulti, so I'm playing for Krugs yet again. This is a common habit I want you to adopt on Jayce, where if you're scared of the enemy jungler, don't just sit back far by your tower respecting, you want to be eating Krugs. Where normally, like I talked about before, right, you want to bait the jungler to come and waste his time, but I'm a no-flash Jayce versus Nocturne. It's very easy for them to kill me, so I don't really want to be baiting them in because it's not really a bait, right? They are just killing me, so I'm playing for Krugs instead. And now that my team is here, Jan is protecting me, Lee Sin's protecting me, that's when I'm playing aggressive, which is a very... And look, now I don't care if Nocturne ults me, but I'm pretty sure we lose this situation, but I'm fine, right? I see that Aurelia was flanking us, so I just play accordingly. I'm sitting far back, playing around my cooldowns, and I'm playing very selfishly. I'm not playing Ornn, I'm not playing Renekton, I don't want to die for the boys, I don't want to get stuck in there. I just want to be maximizing my farm, my HP, and now I'm just basing as soon as I can, as soon as this play is done. And like we talked about before, TPing onto the map for tempo. So I showcase a lot. The reason I like this VOD so much as a full game example is because I showcase so many of the concepts that we talked about throughout this entire video in this one game, and I'm explaining to you how exactly I'm doing so, and my thought process throughout the entire time. So now from this point, I'm thinking we're quite far behind. I really need to be careful because I'm the only point of strength on our team. So if I let Nocturne kill me, there's a great chance we lose this game. And here I'm waiting for Lee Sin to finish his camp so he can be near me. I'm not too scared of this Aurelia. He's not very strong. Their main point of strength is pretty sure their bot lane. So I killed my bot lane 5 or 6 times. You know, the solo queue special. But luckily there Darius makes a big mistake. And now my Janna and Lee Sin are playing around me so I can play a bit more aggressive. I don't care if Nocturne ults me that much, which is a very common theme you'll notice. I'm just trying to protect my vision, my team's trying to protect me, and we're playing for this bot tower. We don't really want to take a 5v5 around Herald because our bot lane is so weak, and normally you don't want to be playing side lane as Jayce, right? Like we talked about before, but I also touch on the identity and mindset section that there are situations where you will, and situations where you can, and this is just one that I talked about where my team is playing towards me, my team is protecting me, so it's very easy for me to play aggressive on this Aurelia, play for this tower, and it's different than if it was just me here by myself and I was trying to do this, I'd be instantly killed by the Nocturne. So now I'm pretty sure I even get this bot tier 2. We trade Herald for it because it's important, right? We talked about being at an objective on time or a minute before so that you can poke them as they're coming in. But that doesn't mean you need to fight every single objective. In this case, we would have lost the fight. Our bot lane is so far behind. So instead I played side lane and my team played around me. Where if my team didn't play around me, even if I pinged, I would just adapt. I would have a new game plan. Maybe I'd be eating camps and maximizing my CS and looking to make a game plan in the future. So now from this point, even though I'm a lot stronger than Darius, I can beat him if I play it well. That's not my win condition on my champion. I'm not playing Jax, I'm not playing Fiora. If I play aggressive on him inside or try to break the top tier 2, I'm going to get killed by Nocturne, where I make top lane neutral. I even eat camps on the way to maximize my CS, and now I'm looking to group up with my team and poke them as they walk into the next objective. Where Dragon's spawning soon. I'm a little bit late, but I traded my tempo for breaking a bot tier 2 tower. Of course that's worth, and now I'm eating more camps on my way, very greedy. You know, the champion inherently is greedy, so it's fine to do so. And now I'm looking to poke them as they walk in. Where their teamfight comp is quite strong, they have champs like Rakan, hard engage, but if I can poke them before he engages, we're going to have a good chance of winning. Where here actually Ziggs are doing a lot more poke than me. I'm a bit rusty on the Jayce, so I'm missing a couple of my shock blasts. But I'm doing the right job, right? I'm neutralizing side, I'm coming to the objective before it spawns and poking them as they come in. And now they feel desperate to engage onto us because they're getting poked down, and it's very easy for us to win this fight because they're already low HP before the engage has begun. So now my team is doing the dragon and I base straight away, which is a huge mistake I see a lot of my students make, where if you're playing a top lane champion, you don't want to be wasting your time beating down this dragon for 30 seconds, because as a top laner, you have a responsibility for the side wave, either using that to pressure or nullifying their pressure by making it neutral or one wave past neutral. So the faster you can base after a player's finish, the faster you get to side, the faster your job is going to be done. So on Jayce, that means the faster I can neutralize side wave, the faster I can group up with my team and poke them down mid, which means we can pressure them and play for this Baron that's spawning very soon. We're here, neutralize bot, and I'm fogging towards mid like we talked about, and I'm looking to poke them if they show their face. And now my Ziggs is basing. However, that doesn't mean I can't poke, and bot wave's not urgent right now, so I get some poke down on Xayah, but now Aurelia is making me answer her, so I'm going to go back bot. Where if she showed on my bot wave the second I pushed it, I would have gone back bot a lot earlier, but I'm just seeing what she's doing. Because even though I'm ahead on Jayce, you still want to play a bit more reactive in the side lane, because if you play too proactive, too aggressive, they're just going to kill you. And here's some pretty nice mechanics there, dodging your abilities, but I'm not too afraid of this champion, right? I'm not too afraid on the 1v1 on Jayce, because I'm quite confident on my Jayce mastery. I'm worried about this, the Nocturne ulti, which is why I didn't give her a opportunity to engage onto me with the Nocturne ult. I would have phase rushed out of there, had flash if I had to, and now we're able to easily win the fight. Because these side lane champions, like Jax, like Aurelia, they have to get something done in the side lane, but Jayce is just such a strong champion in terms of pure 1v1 if you're playing it correctly, so it's hard for them to do so. They need to be bringing their jungler down, which is the very reason why you don't want to be playing just too aggressive in the side lane and getting punished. So now I base as soon as we got Baron and bought a stopwatch, because my only lose condition in this game is if I give a 1k shutdown. So I buy the stopwatch, and here I notice my Taliyah is playing side, where of course it's better for me, my champion. However, with Baron, you only really want to be playing 2 lanes, because if I played 3 lanes here, someone would get killed by Nocturne straight away. So here, my Taliyah basing grouped up with the team, so that gives me an opportunity to go bot, and now we're just looking to punish them for overstaying. And hopefully this works out well. There's a high chance it does, because we see Xayah on the map. They can't really win this fight without her, because as we saw before, their bot lane got 5 or 6 solo kills. They're their only real way of winning the game. And Xayah's mid, so I don't mind taking this fight. And I was hoping Taliyah would clear that wave, but he didn't. Took him a while. But essentially, we're just trying to play 2 lanes with Baron, set up in their jungle, and poke them under tower and siege down these towers. That's the main goal. You don't really want to be playing side lane by yourself as Jayce, even with Baron, because it's still easy for me to die. And here, luckily, my team's all grouped up with me, and we're able to break this down and siege. And after this, we're probably going to back out straight away, because we can't end the game here. It's not realistic, and top wave is urgent. Someone has to answer it. So it's fine not to overstay for this base and just head on to mid straight away. So now Xayah is making us answer top, but luckily for me, the Taliyah goes instead, which means I can stay here, siege down these towers, poke the enemy team with my Ziggs, and it's going to be very easy for us to break this tier 3. And I'm doing a ton of damage from this point. I'm very strong, 2 to 3 item spike like we talked about. 3 items on Jayce is just the peak. You feel so strong, especially if you have a stopwatch, you have flash. It's very hard for them to punish you. And now, I played a bit too aggressive there, but essentially I'm just looking to poke them down and siege down these towers, break these inhibs, and now I'm low HP. I want to be basing straight away before Nocturne's back and ults me, and now we're going to be looking to do the same thing all over again for top lane. So now coming onto the map, I'm actually wrong. We don't want to be controlling top here because Dragon Soul is spawning. So here we're going to be playing for that. We're going to be looking to poke them as they walk in, and then if they try to commit to us, they're already poked down, so it's going to be a very easy 5v5 win for us. And now I actually regret what I'm seeing on the screen right now. I'm wasting time doing Dragon. I should be looking to pressure as fast as possible. Where here, I'm looking to do just that, poke them down on mid lane, control top jungle, and poke them and eventually get this top tower. Where here, Nocturne ulties. Now, I was briefly worried it was on me, which is why I path back to Lee Sin. I don't really care that much if he kills my Ziggs or kills my Taliyah. I'm prioritizing my own safety because I have no stopwatch at this point, no flash, and I'm the 1k shutdown, right? And inherently, like we said, Jayce is a selfish champion. You want to be prioritizing your own safety. And here, because Nocturne had no ulti, I fixed one wave mid, and the reason I'm not going for one more is because they still have Rakan, he could flash ult me, I could die, and it's better for me to be here with my team and poke them down if they try to engage on us. Like, this is exactly what happens, they're trying to engage before they get poked down, but from this point we're already stronger than them, so it's a very easy win. And we're able to win this game off that, but the main takeaways for this, in my opinion, that I want you to keep in mind, as for the early game, my whole game plan was built around what the enemy jungler wants to do as well. I didn't hyper-focus on winning my lane, of course I still did, but I did so in a way that made me not able to be punished by their jungler at the same time. And as for mid-game, I was prioritizing not the side lane, not winning through side, even though I win 1v1, I was prioritizing grouping up with my team, poking them down, and gaining an advantage with their damage. I'm next going to be covering drafting, so you know exactly when the best time to pick Jayce is, depending on what's on your team, and you also know what to look out for on the enemy team. Now, in terms of your team, the champs you do want to see in terms of jungle are AP frontline CC champions are the best. So champions like Maokai and Sejuani are amazing, Maokai especially, where not only can he help with the poke with his E, but he also has great peel, great frontline, can block skill shots for you if he has to. It's just amazing to play Jayce with Maokai or Sejuani, that feels the best. And as for mid, you want to be playing it with range. So champions like Xerath, Ori, Syndra, any champs that's going to be diving, that's going to be poking them down and making them dive onto you feels great. And Syndra especially, because not only does she have a bit of range, she also has peel as well. Now, as for AD carry, it's going to be the same thing. You want to be playing with range. So AP Kai'Sa feels the best, because she can help with your poke, and she's magic damage as well. She can be hitting some big W's alongside your Shock Blast, or if you don't have an AP Kai'Sa, that's fine. You can be playing it with Jinx or Cog, just range champions in general. And as for support, Peel is the best. You want to be playing with supports that peel you, so Milio or Lulu is fine. But even champs like Braum or Tahm feel great, because the only way to counter a range comp most of the time is going to be to dive onto you. They're going to have to dive onto you to kill you to stop your poke, so if you have a support whose job is to keep you alive and a jungler as well, that's going to be very easy for you to do your job. And as for champs you don't want to be seeing on your team from jungle, it's champions that hit none of those boxes. Champions that aren't tanky, they're not AP, they're not frontline, so champions like Graves, Kindred, Master Yi all feel completely worthless when you're playing Jayce. So if you're picking later on in the draft and you see those champs on your team, you should be having second thoughts. And as from mid, it's going to be AD diving assassins. So champions like Zed, champs like Aurelia, they're not really going to be helping you range, they're going to be diving in. And that's not really what Jayce wants to be doing. He doesn't really want to be diving in. He wants to be sitting back and poking. And those champions, if they're diving, they have to do everything by themselves because you're not going to be helping them. And it just feels messy. It doesn't really have a lot of synergy together. And as for AD carry, it's going to be the same thing. Champs like Samira, champs like Lucian, champs like Nyla even, champs that dive in, don't feel very good with Jayce at all. And as for support, it doesn't matter too much to be honest, but a champ like Senna would feel horrible, Karma, champs that just don't do anything to be honest, right? Where, let's say you had a Rel for example, he can still peel you. Even a Leona or a Nolus can peel you, that's why it's not too bad to play with divers, but a champ like Senna, who has no peel, no frontline, no tankiness, champs like that feel terrible. Now moving on to the enemy team, the champs you do want to be seeing from top lane are champions with low threat onto you. So champs like Aatrox, champs like Garen, champs like Jax, they're not very threatening at all. If they dive onto you, it's very easy for you to knock them away, phase rush out of there if you have to, and it's not very scary at all for you. Now from jungle, it's going to be the same thing, low threat. Low threat is going to be the name of the game for champs you do want to be versing. So Graves, Tilia, Ivan, champs like this, they have no real way to get onto you. It's very easy for you to poke them down. They are shorter range than you, and they have, no dive, so it's very easy to play against them. And as for mid, it's going to be a mobile carries. So champions like Azir, it feels amazing. Orianna, Syndra, very easy for you to poke them down. Syndra a little less so, she's going to be looking to snipe you down with stuns of her own, but in general, you outrange her stun, right? So it's fine. But champions like Azir just feel great to play Jayce into, and AD carries the same thing. Champions like Jinx, champions like Xayah, where they have no dive, they have no ability to get onto you, and they're relying on their range, but your range is longer than theirs, so it's very easy for you to chunk them out. And as for support, you really want to be versing enchanters. So champs like Lulu or Milio, very great for you to play into, because not only can you build Serpent's Fang later on if you need to, it's very easy for you to just hit one Shock Blast or two and they need to base, or in a lot of situations you actually kill them in 2 shots. And as for the champs you don't want to be versing, it's going to be the opposite, high threat. So from top lane, champions like Malphite, Aurelia, Rengar, so much high threat onto you, a lot of point click abilities, very easy for them to reach you. And as for jungle, champs like Rek'Sai, Nocturne, Jarvan, very threatening for you if you don't have flash, very hard to survive. From mid, something that feels really bad to play into as Jayce is Assassins, because if a Talon or a Kiana gets a couple kills from mid and they start roaming top, it's going to be very hard for you to survive. Very easy for them to one-shot you and it's hard to play into, especially point-and-click champions such as Zed or Talon. And as for AD carry, champions you don't want to be versing, it doesn't matter as much as the other roles, but high threat as well, champs like Samira, Kai'Sa, they can follow up the other threatening champs on their team. And as for supports, it's going to be hard engaged like Rel, Nautilus, Alistair, champs that if they reach you and get onto you and CC you, very easy for their teammates to follow up and kill you. And if you want an example of what a great Jayce comp will look like, I have a good example from Worlds recently where G2 built quite a nice comp, and even though they lost this game, their comp made a lot of sense, where they had Jayce Maokai, my favorite pairing with Jayce, and they also had a lot of peel. They had Braum and Poppy to keep the Jayce alive, and also they had extra range from AD carry. Now in my opinion, they overcapped in terms of peel. They should have swapped out Poppy or Braum with something else, but the comp in general makes sense, right? They have 2 range champions, Cog and Jayce, and they have 3 champs to keep them alive, to peel for them and provide CC. Up next, we're going to be covering how to counter Jayce, and the easiest way by far is of course just to pick Malphite, but most Jayces, if they're good at the game, they're going to be banning Malphite before they blind pick Jayce, so for the first piece of real advice, use the minions to block his Q. Now that sounds pretty straightforward, but a lot of Jayces are going to be shooting their Q off cooldown, they're going to be looking to poke you down, and if you can use the minions to block it, make them ruin their wave, make it push towards you, it's going to be very easy for you to set up a gank for your jungler. The next tip is make sure your timing is flash. You can time it in chat for your team to see. You can even check in loading screen in OPGG. Make sure he's got Cosmic Insight or not before you time it. Make sure you're aware when he buys cooldown boots. Be very aware of his flash timer throughout this game because it's very easy to punish this champion, especially if he's an inexperienced Jayce player when his flash is on cooldown. Now in general, the best way to play into Jayce is to hard engage onto him. So if you have a hard engage champion in your pool, champion like Malphite or Ornn or Camille, that's going to feel pretty good. But if you don't, that's not a problem. You just need to play in a different way. Where the way Jayce wants to be playing, like we talked about in the mid-game section, he wants to be pushing outside and arriving to an objective early, looking to poke down your team as they're walking in. But if you know his game plan, then you can change your game plan accordingly. Where let's say you base 2 minutes before the next objective, and you use your timer to push outside all the way, and now you're crashing a wave under his tier 2 around 30 seconds or lower before the objective spawning. Now he has to make a choice. He needs to answer you, and now he's stuck under the tower, you'll make him react to you, and he's not poking your team. Or he's going to group at this objective where you can backping your team away from it, and you're going to be able to take the tower for free. You should be trying to make him make a choice, where if you were to base 1 minute before the objective, for example, you don't really have time to use your side wave to make him answer, so you really need to be there, you really need to have that wave crash, so that he's answering it before the objective is spawning or as it's spawning, because if he doesn't, you're going to break the tower. To wrap up this guide, I'm going to be going through the main takeaways, the most important things I want you guys to value when learning this champion. First point being, you're going to get camped when playing Jayce. It might not be every single game, but there are going to be a lot of games you play where the enemy jungler is trying to punish you because you're on a mobile champion that's playing aggressive. You're going to be poking down your lane opponent, he's going to be crying for help, so you are going to get ganked more often than not, so you need to learn to embrace this fact, where a lot of top laners, myself included, can feel frustrated at times when you're getting camped by the enemy jungler, but if you truly want to become a master at Jayce, you need to see this as a reality, something that's going to happen more often than not, and you need to play accordingly. You need to embrace the fact that you're going to be wasting the enemy jungler's time, absorbing the pressure, and even though that means you can't beat your lane as hard as you'd like to, you're winning the game in a different style, and you need to learn to embrace that. The second point being 100 to 0 trading, where you want to be damaging your opponent without taking any damage in return. Now I touch on it a lot in the laning section of the guide, and I know there will be some matchups you play where this is not possible, but that should be your goal heading into the lane. The third main takeaway is be at the objectives early to poke them as they walk in and secure the area. You really want to be getting there around 60 seconds before it spawns, so you have time to get your vision down, get your pings, look to poke them as they walk into contest, because you don't really want to be starting a 5v5 where everyone is full HP on Jayce, you ideally want to be poking them down before the teamfight even begins. Next point being is be aware that the side lane is very dangerous for Jayce. You don't really want to be winning through side on Jayce, you just want to be resetting it to even or one way past even so you don't have to deal with it. Because if you're grouping mid and poking the opponents or arriving to a dragon early, poking them down, and you lose top tier 2 for example, that's going to feel pretty bad. However, if you neutralize or push it one way past even, and then group and poke, you're not losing anything on the other side, so you just want to be seeing side lane as something that you have to deal with, one of your chores, before you group and poke. And the final takeaway, abuse your 2 to 3 item spike. Jayce comes online around 2 to 3 items, he feels very powerful, one of the strongest champs in the game at that point, where later on into the game, a lot of champs will start to outscale you, where a lot of mages or a lot of AD carries, they start to do a lot better around 4 to 5 items, where Jayce spikes around 2 to 3, so you want to be abusing that fact by sitting up around Baron, poking them as they walk in, and trying to secure Baron, trying to secure a big advantage while you're at your strongest. Okay, everyone, I'm going to wrap it up there. And my final piece of advice that I want you to take away is don't get too disheartened if you have a couple of bad games while playing Jayce. You're bound to have games where you go 0-3 or even 0-5. That's just reality because the enemy jungler is going to make it his life's goal to camp you and shut you down. But once you get to that point where you're winning your lane whilst wasting the enemy jungler's time, you're really going to fall in love with this champion. So look forward to that. And I wish you the best of luck on your Jayce journey. But other than that, I'll see you guys next time.